Your sensors are correct. Do not adjust your heading. You've discovered the Omega Particle, streaming to the Alpha Quadrant and beyond. Here's your host, the anchorman of the Federation, the Doctor of Dilithium. This is Jonathan Wiegand.
Yes. We are back. We are back again. In the words of Elton John, we are still standing, and you can't stop this rolling train. I am here gladly and graciously as your host, this guiding beacon in troubled times. Your host, Jonathan Wiegand. Welcome to the Omega Particle. You have discovered it, and you are about to embark on another excursion into podcasting excellence. Oh boy, do we have a show today. This will be probably one of the most fun shows I've ever done, because I've only ever done one, and this one definitely beats the last one. So thank you for tuning in today, wherever you're at, in the cubicle, in the car, even on the treadmill, if you're crazy. Listen to podcasts on the treadmill. Either way, as Worf says, today is a good day to die, because we are covering the infamous Khan Noonien Sue, the best villain in all of Star Trek. He has superhuman strength, intelligence, and he can quote literature better than your emo college girlfriend that was an English major. He is the total package. Now, before we deep dive into Khan's past, where did he come from? How did he get here? I'm going to cover a little bit of recent Star Trek news that's really relevant to this topic. And I would kind of beat myself up if I didn't cover this at least, because I had no idea this existed until I started researching it. So from comicbook.com, Nicholas Meyer, who actually directed Star Trek Wrath of Khan, has given an update on his long-rumored Khan miniseries on CBS All Access. So when I first heard about it, I was like, oh, this would be great. Maybe we'll get that prequel that I'm covering now. Sadly, no. We know what the title of that miniseries could potentially be, and it'll be Zeta Alpha 5, which, if you're a Star Trek nerd, your ears pricked up, because that is the planet Kirk abandoned Khan and the other genetic followers at the end of the Space Seed original series episode, and where we pick Khan up on Star Trek Wrath of Khan. So according to Meyer, he says it might be too expensive to make just a 3-part episode series. And that kind of makes sense if you're pushing a lot of money and time into something that's just going to be 3 episodes. I kind of agree with him on that. So the project hasn't been shelved, quote unquote, but it's still kind of in pre-production hell. Interestingly enough, they actually trademarked the name Zeta Alpha 5. So hopefully maybe we're okay getting the ball rolling sometime, because I know that CBS All Access is kind of searching to find that next Trek show so that we will not always be kind of in limbo in the summertime. Because right now Discovery comes on like in the spring and ends in the summer, and now we have Picard sometime in the winter. So it's kind of like, what's going to bridge that gap? And there's even rumors that there's 2 other shows potentially, and maybe this is one of them, I hope, because I would love to see the time period between Space Seed and Wrath of Khan. I think that'd be really interesting, cool subject matter to go through. Now on to Khan. What we all came here for. What we have all been waiting for. The moment's here, ladies and gentlemen. Before the Botany Bay, before the Wrath even began, how did he come into power? What made him up? Now, if you look at throughout history, you have the great brutal dictators like in Stalin and Hitler or Mao. There's always some formation in their childhood that forced them to be these brutal dictators. And so we can definitely see the formation in Khan. Our main source material is The Eugenics War by Craig Cox. I really enjoyed this book and I highly recommend it. It was a great read. It was informative, and it was really interesting on how it intertwined with also geopolitical forces in the Cold War. I thought that was really interesting. He did a great job of that, which sometimes you don't necessarily get in sci-fi books. So our story starts off with 2 scientists. One is called Gary Seven, and one is called Roberta Lincoln. I'll just refer to them as Seven and Roberta. We learned that these two scientists have a mission to protect all of humanity, that they are there to make sure that humanity doesn't destroy itself. The book begins in 1974, and we're into the world of the Cold War. And all of a sudden, all of these genetic scientists start disappearing all over the world, which, if you think about it, in the Cold War, would definitely raise suspicion, would definitely make you think somebody is doing something is going on, we need to investigate it. So I'm sure not only these two scientists, Seven and Roberta, are thinking about it, there are also governments involved looking for why these genetic chemists, genetic scientists are gone. So there's rumors going around that there's this stockpile of all these biochemical weapons, and all these chemical weapons are being created or used for something nobody really knows, but everybody's tense. Now that everybody's tense, where do you go from here? Now with Gary and Roberta, they start to investigate and they set a trap. They say, hey, let's go to this genetic conference and let's put ourselves out there and say, we believe in human genetic sequencing. We believe in bringing the human race into another stage of evolution. So as they go to this conference, Roberta starts to ask all these questions and really make all these odd comments about human genetic testing. And eventually she gets picked up in this restaurant. And you guessed it, she gets picked up by the same company, corporation, society, whatever you want to call them, that are taking all these genetic chemists and scientists away. They're hoarding these genetic chemists. And they ask her and they really press her to see, A, if she knows her stuff, and B, if she's willing to come with them. And if she's willing to potentially work on something like that. Because they hint at her, hey, we're a lot farther than you could even imagine in human genetic testing. And they show her this rat that has bioluminescence in it. And that piques her attention. As she's sitting in this restaurant across from this team of genetic scientists, she learns that this whole operation with these biochemicals and scientists is called Project Chrysalis. Ultimately, she gets what she wants. She's recruited and Roberta joins Project Chrysalis. Now, when she joins Project Chrysalis, she wants to go into the belly of the beast, A, to see if the rumors are true. Hey, if they're building biochemical weapons, I need to know. And B, are they building human genomes, human subjects? I need to know that too, because this is pertinent to the survival of the human race. They're not time travelers, they're just scientists with that mission to save the Earth. And we'll go into a little bit more as the plot reveals who they are. So Roberta eventually gets to Project Chrysalis headquarters, which is in between India and Pakistan in a desert called the Thar Desert. And it's deep underground, probably 2,000 feet underground. And so it's underground, and as Roberta comes out of the elevator and this massive complex is revealed, and it's shaped like a lotus flower, and it's gorgeous, and it's something she never imagined could have been constructed underground. She said it even had like the technology to simulate sunlight and clouds and wind and beautiful architecture, and it's bustling, and there's all these complicated tunnels, and she's just completely blown away. And now she's secretly hoping, hey, maybe this is just, we're all wrong. Maybe this is just some super intellectual scientific community, and maybe we're wrong. So eventually Roberta goes on a tour of this facility. And there's two main things that happen on this tour. First off, as she's going around, she's asking like legitimate questions like, hey, we're in the middle of the desert. Where are we getting all of this power? Where are we getting all of this technology from? And the guy showing her around says, well, we actually have a nuclear reactor on the surface level, and part of it's down underground too. And this is what I love about the book. A lot of times people would say that's kind of erroneous. That really wouldn't fit in modern times. But in the Cold War, every nation was trying to bolster their nuclear technology. Every nation wanted to compete and protect themselves, especially the Russians and the Americans, but also India, China, Iran. All of these countries were building and trying to embark. So if this nuclear reactor and facility suddenly went up, I'm sure not a lot of people ask questions. And now it seems a little overreach, but I think it's a good little touch of history by the author that he added in that makes it a little bit more plausible in my eyes. So as she learns about this reactor, she's asking questions like, well, what happens if it leaks, or what happens if there's a meltdown? And the worker taking her around says, well, we actually have an emergency shutoff valve that will destroy the whole plant in case that happens. Like if a bio weapon gets out, we can shut down a plant, sterilize everything so it doesn't get out to anybody. Which again, plausible cause. I'm like, all right, that makes sense. But the second part of her tour that's the most interesting to me is when she comes across this classroom. And this classroom has multiple kids in it, probably 15, 20 kids. And it's so cool to me because these kids aren't average kids. They have unique abilities. One 4-year-old girl is watercoloring, and she's doing the Mona Lisa. Another boy is doing complex calculus equations at 5 years old. And one particular small Indian boy is reading Dante's Inferno in the corner. Pretty tough stuff for a 5-year-old to be reading. This catches Roberta's eye. She's like, interesting choice for a 5-year-old to read. So she starts a conversation, and we learn that the little boy's name is Noon. And he's very charming, very happy little boy. And as she's conversing with him, all of a sudden, this other child that was once partaking and doing marvelous things in the arts and sciences suddenly starts convulsing violently. So violently, in fact, it disturbs everyone around and everyone inside that classroom. And everyone's concerned except this little boy named Noon, who just marks it off as nothing's happening to him. He just looks on still. He just looks on coldly without a care in the world. Kind of freaks Roberta out, kind of freaks me out. But then again, I think we all know who this little boy Noon is and who he's going to grow up to be. We learn that through this child's seizure that there are children that are not genetically whole, that this testing on humans is not a complete, foolproof science just yet. And actually, we learn that there's only one child that has had no genetic defaults, has had no genetic issues, and is perfectly sound physically and psychologically. And that little boy, as you probably guess, is Noon. Roberta learns this as she's walking around with Dr. Serena Carr. See, Dr. Serena Carr is the head of the Chrysalis project. And also, while running this whole project, she is pregnant, as all women in the Chrysalis project are pregnant, we learn. They're pregnant because they want to volunteer to be carriers of the next human evolution. As we learn later, Noon's mother is this Dr. Serena Carr. Noon definitely has leadership in his blood, as they would say. So as Roberta is remaining undercover and doing her best to collect information and anything that would help in potentially shutting this place down if need be, because we do know there's no biochemicals per se, but there are genetically altered humans, and that ain't cool. So now moving on to 7, we see him going through an office, and we learn that he has tracked down this particular agent of the Chrysalis project, going through their information and trying to see what are they doing. Again, he doesn't know what Roberta knows, biochemicals and stuff. So he's still researching on his own, and he's discovered and he's captured. We learn that he's actually an alien and that he has this crazy technology like transporters and in kind of an archaic phaser pistol that he can use to stun people. This Chrysalis officer is highly intrigued and says the main boss has to see this guy. She definitely has a lot of questions for him. Kidnap Seven, and they take him to the Tar Desert underground to meet Dr. Carr. As Seven is drugged and given true serum and tried to spill out all he knows about who he is, what race of alien he is, and the technology he has, he's resisting best he can, but Dr. Carr can't get anywhere with him. So she leaves him in this cage. Flash over to Roberta, who is minding her own business. Homing beacon starts going off. And she realizes, oh my gosh, Seven's here. He's in the facility. Oh, so she kind of freaks out. And then she goes on the hunt for him. And as she's going on the hunt for him, she discovers all this brutal animal genetic testing. And she finds him. And he's drugged, but he's coming to. And he's like, hey, we need to get out of here. They're doing terrible things. They know who I am, et cetera, et cetera. And Roberta's like, well, this is great because they are testing on humans. So we kind of need to shut this place down. There's a nuclear reactor. We can blow this place to keep them calm. They're like, great. And then quickly before they set off for the reactor, Roberta goes, hey, we need to take care of these kids. These kids didn't ask to have their DNA spliced and they need to be saved. And Seven's like, well, they can't remain together. They're too powerful. They remain together. They could do dangerous things, and we just don't know the outcome of that. Roberta's like, fine, we'll split them up. We'll spread them all across the earth. They won't know each other. They won't ever have any contact. And so that's what Roberta does. She takes all of the children and transports them all over the world, one by one, while Seven goes to the nuclear reactor to shut it down. And so he starts the shutdown process, the self-destruct. And as he's starting the self-destruct, he alerts the whole facility, hey, this place is exploding, get out. You got 30 minutes to get out. And of course, mass chaos starts and mass evacuation. So everyone's getting out. And then Dr. Carr comes up and says, how could you do this? This is my life's work. I will go down with my ship. I can't live without my work. And it's too late to stop the self-destruct. So she goes down with the ship. Seven transports out of there. So now we're left with Project Chrysalis in complete ruin. There's no hope. 15, 20 kids that were birthed out of that are now around the world. They have probably no idea that there are other genetically altered kids like themselves. They probably have no idea that they are genetically altered. They just think maybe I'm just really intelligent and strong. Now we move up 10 years. And we find Noon sitting on a roof reading about Alexander the Great. Now this is one of his hobbies. He loved researching Alexander the Great, researching this great conqueror and warrior. It was one of his favorite pastimes. As well as reading, he is also pursuing a doctorate in engineering from Delhi University. And that's where he's at. He's in Delhi, India now as a 15-year-old boy. And as he's on the university, one day he decides to go out and get some more books, some more literature. And as he's out, he encounters this mob. Now, these mobs have been going on for a few days because the Indian Prime Minister has actually been assassinated. So since she was assassinated by her 2 Sikh bodyguards. Now, why is that important? Because Noon is Sikh. So this mob is hunting down Sikhs. So they catch up with Noon and they say, hey, we see that you're a Sikh. That's hard to say. And we're gonna kill you. We're gonna go after you. Now, this isn't a normal mob here in America where they like torch a Starbucks. I mean, they're actually gonna go and do real damage, hard damage. And so somebody throws kerosene on Noon and tries to light a match, and he's running for his life. He's dipping in and out of alleyways. He's going all over the place, kind of beside himself. And all of a sudden, he hears a calming American accent voice saying, "Noon, come here. Noon, it's me. It's Seven. Come on." He gets with Seven. They transport back out to New York City, where Roberta and Seven live and kind of have headquarters set up. Noon is rescued. How different would the Star Trek world look if he got caught by that mob? Noon is rescued, and all of a sudden, Seven and Roberta have to come clean. I mean, they just transported out of thin air, and they come clean that Seven's an alien, that they've been working to save the Earth, and then all of a sudden delivers his famous line of like, "I remember both of you. I never forget a face," as he said in Star Trek 2. I never forget a face. So as he's talking with Seven and Roberta, they kind of have to hide out for the riots to die down, and it's safe to go back. And eventually, when it is safe to go back, they transport him there, and then they kind of have this slight conversation, Roberta and Seven, between themselves, saying, "Hey, you think he'd be a good agent? You think he would be good to work with us?" Because, I mean, they're getting older. They're progressing in age, and they're like, "We need some new blood. We can't do this forever. He seems to be emotionally and mentally stable. Bring him in. Let's bring him in one day." And so it's decided then, hey, one day in the near future, we're going to bring him in and see what he can do. Put him to the test. 3 or 4 years pass, and you know what? That day has finally come. Seven and Roberta have a mission for Noon. He's in India doing his own thing, studying engineering, being a prodigy at it. And they pull him out and say, "Hey, we have this mission in Antarctica, and we need your help. Can't do it without you." He agrees. And the mission is that there's a lab in Antarctica that's building this weapon that needs to be destroyed. Again, save and protect humanity. They bring him all the way to Antarctica. And on the way, they discuss that all the other children are completely destructive. They have fallen into self-destructive behavior, that Noon is the only self-reliant, emotionally and psychologically stable one out of all of them, the 15, 20 kids. It kind of surprises Noon, but again, he's starting to get super arrogant, and he's like, "Yes, I am superior, and I am the one." So as they approach this laboratory, Seven kind of gives a briefing about how that it's called Da Vinci Labs, and it's ran by a man named Dr. Wilson Evergreen, and that he's building this ozone manipulation technology, and he's going to launch weather satellites to heal the ozone, to try to close up the ozone holes caused by carbon emissions. If you're really hardcore Trek, your ears just perked up at that name, Dr. Wilson Evergreen, and we'll cover that soon. I don't want to give away any of the plot. This laboratory making this ozone technology, they take out the security, they round up all the scientists, and they basically tell Wilson, "Hey, you need to get your people in an area that's safe." Where is that area? Because we're going to blow this place up. Dr. Evergreen goes nuts, rightfully so. He goes nuts, tries to run away, fights, struggles, all three of them. And then suddenly Khan pulls out a blade, stabs Dr. Wilson Evergreen in the back. He lands with a thud, and all of a sudden, it's a whole new ballgame. Yes, they want to save the Earth, but not like this, not killing people. This kind of shocks Roberta and Seven, and they don't really know what to do. Again, they had the impression that Noon was stable, that he could control his emotions, that almost mature, being a 19, 20-year-old man. But no, he's not. He acted out of impulse, and as they question Noon, he just says, well, he deserves that. He was trying to get away. Again, that coldness returns that we saw with the child having the seizure. Now we see with him killing a man. So you can see the progression already and how far he's come psychologically and emotionally. So as the three of them continue debating Noon's actions, all of a sudden, Dr. Evergreen starts to writhe around on the floor. He starts to shift, and all of a sudden he stands up, pulls the blade out. To my surprise and everybody else's, he is an immortal. Yes, an immortal. Like that famous Star Trek episode, The Immortals. Wow, they had some great titles back then. They discover he's an immortal. He's 6,000 years old and was from Mesopotamia. Now that they know his secret, he's a little bit more calm, and he's like, well, why do you want to destroy it? Is it competition? Are you other scientists? And they say no. They say the Pentagon, the Russians, the Chinese, everybody's wanting to develop it like yours. Everyone wants this technology, and they are monitoring you very closely. But they don't want to use it for good, like closing up the ozone. They want to turn it into a weapon. So that if they go to war with one another, they can rip open the ozone. When Dr. Evergreen hears this, he's like, well, they betrayed me. I thought those governments were going to use this for good, and now they're going to weaponize it. Well, I'll just start over. I'm 6,000 years old. No biggie. And they all decide to blow it up. And they blow up the weather satellites. They blow up their labs. Everything seems hunky-dory. Except for the fact that Noon lucked out. He could have killed a man today. And they don't want to take that risk anymore. Seven and Roberta silently agree that Noon is pretty much done. So now that Noon is all but done in their eyes, they decide to transport him back. So Seven takes him back to Delhi, and they drop him off. And as Seven's about to transport out, all of a sudden they hear all this screaming, and they hear all of this wailing, I guess is the best way to describe it. They cautiously approach the situation, and they see that there was an explosion. Biochemical, looked like. Giant white clouds in the sky. Maybe it was nuclear, they don't know. But there's hundreds and thousands of people affected. They're covered in this white chemical material, they don't know. And they're burning. Some have it all over their skin, some have it in their eyes. Noon and Seven are horrified. They say, what happened? Seven immediately thinks, wow, we didn't shut down Project Chrysalis. They survived somehow, and now this is one of their bombs. No, it was a pesticide factory. It blew up. Seven's like, how could it blow up? Don't they have regulations and safety? And Noon goes, no, not here. The politicians don't care as long as they're paid. And so Noon wants and starts to push Seven. Hey, help me. Help everyone around me with that technology. Start transporting many people as you can away. Let's get these people to safety. And Seven's like, we can't do that. We're supposed to lay undercover. We're supposed to remain low key, remember? We just can't go trailblazing that we have this technology in the mid-1980s. So as this approaching mass biochemical pesticide cloud comes towards them, they decide to get out of there. Noon reluctantly, Seven almost happily gets out of there. And so they transport back to Noon's college dorm, and this is the first crack in the wall that we see of the future dictator. And they have a philosophical debate. Noon says, why did we not help them? So Noon is angry at himself because he's been playing, as he put it, spy games while he should have been at his home city in Delhi, protecting his people, his friends, his family. He should have been protecting people that he knew instead of this abstract, random, distant enemy that could or could not be a problem. Asking and berating Seven for more information about his technology, and says, look, we have the duty and the right to protect these people. Greedy corporations and weak politicians do not have the right. We do. We are superior men of our intellect and physical ability. We should rule with power and not let this chaos happen. Chaos like this should not be tolerated. And Seven says, well, We have a mission to protect the Earth from potential hazards. This is an industrial accident. Accidents happen. Noon can't believe it. He says the world deserves better from us. And almost as a Dark Knight Heath Ledger line, the world deserves better and we're going to give it to them. Seven says, look, that's not our mission, but do you know what? Maybe I'm going to see you in a few years. You need to mature a little bit. You need to grow up. And maybe in a few years when you're grown up, we'll see about this recruitment process again. But for right now, you kind of need to take some time. And as Seven's about to transport out, Noon goes, don't call me that. Call me Khan. Khan is the name of a man. It is the name of a conqueror. And fun side fact, Khan is actually a Sikh religious leader that ruled in Punjab, India years ago, like hundreds and hundreds of years ago in the 1600s. So I think that Dr. Carr named Khan after that, a great leader in this Sikh nation. So I think it's a cool little fun world geopolitical side fact. Again, in Star Trek, I had no idea. We leave. Noon is no longer Noon. He's now Khan, the name of a conqueror. And so flash forward to 1989, and Roberta is just watching the Berlin Wall fall. She's relieved. She's happy. She's like, hey, this is all coming together. The world is uniting. Communism has fallen. The Soviet Union is over. The Cold War is done. Now, Seven is actually over in East Berlin, East Germany, trying to pull some strings and keep everyone at bay from having bloody revolutions and kind of this protecting this power vacuum. However, since Gary Seven is not there, Roberta's there alone. And all of a sudden, the door gets kicked in. 4 men appear, and I'm guessing you know who one of them is. Khan Noonien Soon is there demanding to know the location and names of the other genetically modified children, or quote-unquote children of Chrysalis, demanding their information. Roberta asks, who are these 3 guys with you? Khan goes, these are my followers. This is no longer a fresh-faced teenage boy. He is a mid-20s man with an eye for conquering. Roberta refuses to give up the information, so Khan is forced to hack into a computer and get the information himself. And as he gains all of the names and locations of the genetically modified children, we learn that Khan, again, braggadociously talking about his accomplishments and that arrogance we see, saying he's been in Tiananmen Square, he's been in the South Korean Democratic Revolution, he's took out the Ayatollah in Iran, he's been fighting the Russians in Afghanistan, he's been moving the pieces on the geopolitical chessboard, and there's a plan. So now that he's got the names of all of his other brothers and sisters that are genetically altered and modified, he asked for the ozone manipulation technology, the one that they destroyed and that Dr. Wilson Evergreen created. So before Khan leaves, he has this ozone manipulation technology. He has the names of all of the children of Chrysalis, and he says to Roberta, don't come after me, don't track me, don't monitor me, and if you do, and it won't end well for you. So that is where we will conclude our story this week. We see Khan going from a quiet, shy 5-year-old boy reading Dante's Inferno to a man in his mid-20s with followers and playing geopolitical chess. But I am excited to see where these next steps take us and curious about how does he end up on the Botany Bay. Eventually, I think he loses the Eugenics War. But how? Again, never really covered before. Something we will cover next week. Again, if you want to suggest any topic for the show, please email us at omegaparticlepodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on Instagram at the Omega Particle and send us a message about, hey, I want you to cover this. I think this would be a great topic, and we'd be happy to do it for you. Thank you for listening. We appreciate all you guys out there. And we'll see you next week as we conclude the Eugenics War, the rise and fall of Khan.